Well, guys, welcome back to the Cycle Sunday podcast. As ever, I'm joined by my good friend Paul up in Edinburgh.
Hey,
How are you, mate?
Peter. Yeah, good. Yeah, no complaints.
Excellent. I guess this video we're going to be in the right gear.
Oh, I
Yeah,
absolutely love that one.
yeah. No, so hopefully everyone has tuned in and watched the latest episode of Cycle Sunday.
Yeah,
And for me, the subject of this video is one that really gets me excited. I am a big fan of technology and materials choice and
yeah,
so on. And therefore, when you're talking about the group set on a bike,
yeah,
I just find them fascinating things. And there's so much we can talk about. I mean, if
yeah.
you thought the fit, our last episode was there was a lot to talk about. In this one, we got loads, haven't we?
Yeah, it's complex. Yeah, so
Yeah.
getting the right
So
thing and yeah,
I guess there's quite a few things. So we've tried broken down our conversation into a few different areas.
yeah,
But where we wanted to start, and we did mention or talk about this in the actual Cycle Sunday episode, but
hmm
it's a really important place to start.
yeah,
Is I love your priority list of where you should, if you like, focus your efforts and spend your money when you're buying a new
yeah,
bike.
yeah,
And your priority list, although you joke it's frame, then frame, then frame.
yeah,
Um, Really, it's frame, then wheels,
yeah,
then group set.
yeah, yeah,
So actually, I mean, we're the next video to this is where we're going to talk about wheels. So we are filming them, if you like, out of order a little bit, but for
sure.
good reason.
Yes.
But I find that list really interesting because
hmm
I am convinced that a good chunk of cyclists and bikers
Yeah,
will be focusing on the group set.
yes, yeah. Well,
It's
it's easy, isn't it?
it's the badge of honor, right?
Yes,
It's
yes,
that snob value in some respects. Is
yeah,
look, I've got DuraAce, or I've got
yeah, yeah,
SRAM Red, or I've got
yes,
Campag Super Record,
yes.
and that it's much easier to say that than look, I've got a countervail Bianchi,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it
What
for
does that
most
mean?
people it means more.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yes, yeah.
But that's going down a very dangerous road,
hmm
is it not?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you've got a budget that lends itself to going for a top end frame with a top end set of wheels with a top end group set, and you've got the money to be able to run and operate and ride that product, then great, perfect, do it because you'll never regret it.
No.
But the amount of people that we see who focus on the group set and go, but I've only got a budget of X, but it's got to have group set Y. So the compromise that has to come from that is then what we feel is the most important part, which is usually the frame. And the analogy that I always like to give customers when they're in the store, it's like buying your house. So you've got three different options when you buy a house. You can go and look at something that is stone built, will never ever fall down ever
Yeah.
because the foundations and the building and structure is absolutely sound. But those types of houses tend to be very expensive. So the chances are for your budget, it may need in the future new kitchen, or it may need a little bit of roof work doing, or it may need new plumbing, or it may need new electrics. But what you've got fundamentally is this foundation that you over years can start adding to finish this project.
Yeah.
Or you can go and buy a really nice house that's been mass built on an estate that's again within the same budget, but has got a slightly compromised building, but it's got a nice kitchen, it's got a nice bathroom, and you can move straight into it, and it's just a nice place to be. But one thing that you'll never
Yeah.
do, hopefully, is you'll never go and buy a completely run down, broken building because it's got $100,000 kitchen in it.
See where you're going with that, my friend.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've got a budget of $3,000 And a DuraAce group set is 1,800 quid of that 3 grand. Guys, you've still got to get the frame, you've still got to get the fork, you've still got to get the wheels, you've still got to get the bar, you've still got to get the stem, the saddle, the seat post, the bar tape, and all those bits and pieces. So how much is that frame in your budget to get your group set?
Whereas if you went
That's all I'm saying.
105, that's probably a grand cheaper. And that
Correct.
money would go on the frame.
Yeah. On the frame.
Yeah. And
and all round you'll get a better package.
Yeah, and so when we were filming the video, and we mentioned this in the video, is in terms of in terms of component manufacturers, I think we've taken the safe seat and said, look, this conversation would be the same irrespective of whether we were talking about Shimano or SRAM or Campac. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to assume all of those are an equal level, equal quality. Knock yourself out. We're not going to get into the SRAM's better than Shimano argument.
No,
because actually, for most cyclists,
because they're all
really good.
Yeah, they're all brilliant.
The other thing though is in terms of the actual job that they do, which is, let's face it, the front and rear derailleur change gear. They all kind of do that job pretty well, pretty much the same.
Yes.
And as we said in the video, the difference is, was it cheap, light, good quality? Pick two. So the difference is going to be their weight or their quality. So in terms of if you're riding the bike, in terms of what it's going to do, its job changing gear, for most people, the difference between the different, 105 Ultegra and DuraAce is really going to be not a great deal of difference.
No. So a way of thinking about it is that the architecture of 105 and Ultegra and DuraAce is pretty much the same. Yeah. They're all, the technology. And when you think about it, so you think about a mechanical transmission, for example, the mathematics involved. There is actually a guy out there, or a person out there, who understands the relationship between one click of the shifter, taking into account the stretch of the cable, moves the derailleur a certain distance that locks your chain from one gear to the next. If you start thinking about the mechanical mathematics that goes into it, as opposed to just, it's got 105 Ultegra or DuraAce written on it, they're all amazing bits of technology. But your difference...
I was going to say, if you're an engineer as well, the concept of taking a drive chain and moving it sideways onto another one is not a great one, actually.
No,
you shouldn't really do that, but derailleur mechanisms do it brilliantly.
They do, absolutely, and it's down to the quality of the chains and the ramps that move the chain from one gear to the next. But it's also important that the rider is also mechanically sympathetic as well. So we often have, not often to be honest, but there are people who say, the shifting's really clunky and really rubbish. And actually, it's because those people potentially are shifting under heavy loads as opposed to just easing a little bit of pressure off the pedals whilst they're changing. And that's the equivalent.
When you see someone on a ride and they're out the saddle going up a hill, and they're changing gear at the same time. It's like, no, don't do that. I can't.
No, it's like flat shifting on in a car that hasn't got a race gearbox. It's like taking your Golf and just instead of depressing the clutch, you just keep the foot absolutely pinned to the carpet, rip it out of a gear and pull it back into the next. It's exactly the same. Things are going to snap and things are going to change. So have a little bit of mechanical sympathy, people. But then the difference between 105 and Ultegra, and I think it's important, we mentioned the word a couple of times, group set. What's a group set? we're talking bike jargon now, and we promised we never would do on this this podcast. Let's de-nerd all of this. So a group set is effectively your shifter mechanism. So the levers that are on the handlebar. It is the braking system. So what those levers are connected to at the wheels, whether it be a rim brake or a disc brake, which we'll go through later. It is the crank and front gear set on the bike that fits to the frame. It is the rear gear block, which is called the cassette, that sits on your rear wheel. It is the derailleurs, and you know why it's called a derailleur is because it derails the chain from one gear to the next. So that's why it's called a derailleur, but also known as front and rear mechs, so mechanisms. And then you've got a chain that basically joins all of those systems front to back that gives you power through a driven wheel. So that makes up your entire group set. And the difference
which is a lot of stuff.
Oh, it's a lot of stuff. And the other thing as well, when people come into and one of the things that we see and hear a lot when somebody comes in for a service and we say, oh, it needs a new chain and cassette and it's going to cost you a couple of £100 to do, they'll turn around and they'll go, oh, Flip, that's more expensive than my car service was. And you go, oh, hold the bus, stop. Your car service of around £150 was a dude lifting the vehicle up on a ramp, opening the sump plug, dropping the oil out the bottom, putting the sump plug, potentially a new one, back in, and then filling up the oil from the top again and changing a filter. It was good value for money. They'll have done a full visual inspection on it, but that's all they've done. They have effectively lubricated your chain for £150.
Yeah.
By us fitting a new chain and cassette, we have just pretty much replaced your gearbox. Go back go back into your car dealership and say, I don't just want an oil and filter change. Could you replace the gearbox in my car? And now find out how much that's cost you for a service. Yeah. So it's
and it's probably worth saying, if it just while we're on that analogy, is my gearbox in my car last time I checked was a sealed unit.
Absolutely.
The gearbox on my bike is open to the weather, so you know you get sand and mud and dirt and
yes,
and it's like it'll be like when you do your oil change in your car, just drop a little bit of sand in with the oil. See how long the gears
see how long it lasts. Yeah. So it's really important for people to start thinking in terms of, right, that quality, light and cheap pick two. So if you go for Shimano 105, it is going to be for the entire group set around 190 grams lighter. Sorry, I've got it the wrong way around. It's going to be 190 grams heavier than Ultegra. Now, 190 grams is not an insignificant amount of weight, based on the fact that you're also trying to rotate it as well. So it's almost rotational inertia as opposed to just static mass. Every single pedal rotation that you're putting in, you're having to turn another 190 grams worth of weight. So, but let's not nerd out on that too much. But that's fundamentally the difference. The way that the braking system works and the efficiency of the brakes, the way that the gears shift up and down, the resistance that you get within the drivetrain losses is actually very, very little difference between 105 and Ultegra. And likewise, between Ultegra and DuraAce, it's not massive. However, a chain and a cassette for 105 lasts about the same amount of mileage as it does for DuraAce. It's about the same. So Shimano have not sacrificed the durability, so the quality of the component for the weight. So if the quality is the same and the weight is less and we
I know
can
what's
only
coming.
pick 2, then the
Yes.
price has to be higher. And the reason being is that your difference, I mean, if you look at a DuraAce rear cassette, if you pick that up in your hand, it is significantly lighter than a 105 cassette for the same ratios. And that's because the top 5 cogs, for example, are made out of titanium, and they're held together within a carbon fiber, what we call spider, or a carbon fiber carriage that then slots onto your wheel free hub body. So for Shimano to engineer a rear cassette that weighs significantly less but has got a similar durability, the price of that rear cassette and the chain that turns it and the chain ring on the front end is incredibly expensive. And you've got to bear in mind that if it's going to need replacing at the same amount of time and the same amount of mileage, can you afford to do it? Because the price of a 105
So give us a number then.
cassette, so 105
Yeah.
cassette is around 47 to 50 quid in that region. Really great value for money for 11 gears on the back. Whereas, and the chain is around 30 quid. DuraAce, your chain, because all the pins that hold the chain together are drilled out and hollowed to reduce the weight. So, and the materials that go into the metal and the finishes that's on there as well are more high tech. But you're looking around 50 to 55 pounds for a chain. The rear cassettes, you're looking in the hundreds, a couple of £100 for a DuraAce cassette. And it's
3
a
or
lot
4
of
times.
3 or 4 times. But the durability is the same pretty much. So what you've got to bear in mind, when you go and ride your DuraAce equipped bike, what you've got to remember is if you can't put 20 quid in an envelope, don't ride it. If you haven't got 20 quid to put in an envelope to go towards your running costs, you can't afford to ride your bike that day. Whereas a 105 chain and cassette, you could probably put a £5 in an envelope to go towards its running costs. So never compromise the quality of your frame and therefore riding experience to get a badge on your gear system would be my advice.
Yeah. And I was going to say that just to kind of, I mean, playing devil's advocate a bit and playing the kind of maybe the mindset of average Joe Bloggs who takes his bike in for a service and the service centre says, oh, you need a new chain and a new cassette. And you think, yeah, right. Really? Mm-hmm. Do I? Yeah. Is it really that worn? It was working fine when he came in. Just clean it and set the mech and adjust it. It'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is that the reason why you're saying it needs to be changed is because you could be wearing out your front chain rings, which then that's much more expensive to change. But also, I guess, it's not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be changing as well. And it could ultimately fail. And if you have a chain snap on a ride, you're in trouble, right?
Yeah. And also, people need to realise that when you bring your bike into a bike shop, we have a legal responsibility to ensure that that bike goes out in a fully roadworthy and safe manner.
Yeah.
So when we turn around and say, no, you've got cracks in the side of your tyres and you've got a worn chain and you've got worn chain rings and you've got worn cassette and all the drivetrain needs replacing, it's not because we haven't got that 4 or 5 hours of workshop work to fill, because trust me, we do. We have no agenda other than your safety.
Yeah.
Because, you know, in 30 years of cycling, a little bit more now, I keep forgetting how old I am, but in more than 30 years of cycling, I've never had a failure on my bike. Ever. Yeah. I've had a puncture, but I've never had a mechanical failure on my bike because I always go for a product that is really well within my budget, not only to purchase, but also to run.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that we see who stretch and stretch and stretch to buy their last all singing, all dancing bike, but then forget about the fact that it's going to cost a fortune to run it. So therefore, they almost say, "Oh, do the minimum amount of service on the bike because I haven't got the money to run it," and it's an absolute travesty.
You can't buy a Ferrari and expect to run it at the cost of a Ford Focus.
No. And I don't know if that happens in the car world in terms of, you just wonder how many people, when you speak to the dealers who sell McLarens and Ferraris and Porsches and what have you, that'll be an interesting conversation. How many people stretch to buy a car that suits their budget? They're not they can afford to buy it, but then it's an argument or a real disappointment when it comes to the servicing. That'd be a fascinating.
Well, interesting. I guess if you look at someone like Ferrari, so Ferrari now offers 7 years inclusive servicing when you buy a new car, and for me, I think that part of that strategic decision was, firstly, it means that those cars are maintained properly. You don't get that problem.
Yeah.
And that does wonders for the kind of resale value, residuals of Ferraris, and that's why Ferraris hold the value so well. And have you ever seen? Is that something that you would? Do you do like service plans and stuff for bikes? Is that?
Do you know?
Is that
this is almost like it's planned. No. But this is almost like it's planned, and I can promise you, listener, it's not.
I've never. Are you just about to do that? Don't tell me.
No, we're not. And there is a fundamental reason why, and you alluded to it before. A car has got sealed components.
Right.
So a car manufacturer can put at 20,000 miles or 2 years, whichever occurs first, your oil needs changing.
Yeah.
At such and such a mileage, your cam belt or cam chain needs changing because it's fully sealed. It's in a closed environment. When you've got a bike, everything is open to the elements, and people treat their bikes in completely different ways. So, for example, where we are in Edinburgh, we have people who live more inland and we have people who live more out towards the coast. So if people ride exclusively between Edinburgh and Dunbar or North Berwick, which is a beautiful part of the world across the coast, every single rain shower that they're going in and every single windy and blustery day could be blowing salt from the salt air onto their bike, which is going to accelerate component wear and component corrosion much faster than somebody who lives more inland. You've got folk who, when they get home after a ride with a nice cup of tea or a beer, dependent on the time of day, they might part of their routine and part of their enjoyment is spending the next hour cleaning the bike down with a toothpick and a cotton bud, and properly make sure that bike is really clean. You then have other people who come in from muddy ride at Glen Tress and just throw it straight in the shed wet. So until you've got parity on where somebody rides and how somebody looks after the bike, you can never put a service package together, which is why we always say to customers, we don't have any service plans, but every single customer who buys a bike from us, we do complimentary assessments to their bike, and we want to see the bike every 4 to 6 months. And that service assessment is done free of charge. And we will give a full detailed list of what that individual bike requires to get it back up to a safe and functioning state. And for us, that's the right way to deal with it on an individual basis.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Really, because I think we've kind of done that subject now. So your choice of you need to think about that ongoing maintenance and that and just this. I guess it's even little things like, and we might talk about this a bit later when we talk about electronic versus mechanical shifting, but
Yeah.
even things like cross chaining is
Oh.
understanding, that there are certain, because although you've got however many gears on the bike, 11 on the back, 2 on the front, 22 gears, you don't have 22 gears because there'll be duplicated ratios on some group sets, and you shouldn't ride outside ring on the front, inside ring on the back, and vice versa.
And vice versa,
adds to the wear. So
again,
always there are some little rules.
Yeah, always remember that your chain link, think of it like it's a knee joint. It's only designed to hinge. It's not designed to take lateral load. So the next time that you're riding, and it's such an ego thing, I'm going to get up this 15% gradient in my big ring.
Yeah.
But then they're in their big ring on the front and their
well.
big ring at the back, where the same ratio would probably occur on your inner chain ring and around 3 gears down at the back, but your chain line will be a lot straighter, and it will be more efficient, but also you'll be putting so much less lateral load through the chain. And the best way of thinking about it is, you imagine somebody, you imagine yourself setting off and in full flight on 100-meter sprint, somebody swipes your knee from the side.
Yeah.
You are going to go down like a sack of spuds.
Yeah.
But that's what you're doing to your chain every time you're putting full load through your cranks with the chain laterally moved off its natural hinged axis. Yeah.
So that just boils down to basic riding technique. But I'm sure that, and I guess if you have an element of mechanical sympathy or mechanical understanding, you'll look down and you'll see that that's happening, and you'll understand why it's bad. But I'm sure there are many people, especially when they first get into cycling with derailleur gears, that they don't know that, and the damage you're doing to your bike is huge.
It's massive. It's massive, and that's going to affect your service bill.
Because you go through chains like a good one.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, this particular episode, we're not talking about wheel choice, but it's probably just worth, because one of the things when you ran down what's in a group set was that you've got this choice nowadays of different types of braking system. You can either brake with a traditional rim brake, where the brake blocks are applied to the rim and that slows you down, or you've now got a disc brake. So I guess the choice of that we cover quite well in the wheel section, but that's just
really big topic.
Wheelie big topic. But even the technology in the disc brakes and a lot of the disc brakes, the higher end ones will be hydraulic disc brakes, just like you find in your car. Some of the cheaper ones might be still wire operated, but they're amazing, aren't they? Really?
Oh, they're fantastic little bits of kit. Yeah, I mean how they produce the braking performance. You'll hear a lot in media, what's called brake modulation, and brake modulation is effectively the feel that you get through the brake lever that's translated into the sort of retardation of the brake. So you don't want a brake that is just on off. So you don't want to be able to just pull your brake lever and suddenly you're hurled over like a sort of Wile E. Coyote style environment over the handlebars and end up down an Alp. So the feel that you get through the brake lever is what we call modulation, and how they engineer that modulation into these little brake systems is I'd love to understand that stuff. These are clever people.
Yeah, they are very clever, and I guess the really exciting thing, I haven't actually ridden a road bike with disc brakes.
Right.
And we this is obviously going to be a disc brake bike. Now I've got disc brakes on my mountain bike, and I know when I first rode that out, and they're hydraulic disc brake. And I remember hanging on my front brake, and the bike stopped so quick. I was like, wow.
Yeah, yeah,
So I am really excited about the braking performance. Although I remember
yeah.
when bikes started to have road bikes, started to have discs. People were like, "Oh, they're too powerful. You'll lock the front brake." You'll the I know there was some worries on the tour because they worried if they had a big crash, you might have this spinning disc that's going to injure people and stuff. But I just
Yeah,
can't wait to feel what they're like.
yeah, they're just absolutely great, and that argument of people sort of cutting fingers off and what have you really cracked me up because
When you got spokes flying around.
I was going to say yeah. The chances of your hand going into 160 millimeter rotational disc versus a 29-inch rotational disc with aero bladed sharp spokes.
Yeah,
But look, these are let's not get involved in that. Ultimately, the choice is pretty much being made for you now. If you are buying a brand new road bike today at £1,000 and above, it's going to have discs of some description.
yeah.
Yes, you can get a custom built for the real traditionalists out there. You can get a custom built bike that might have rim brakes, just like Eagle and Singer would give you an old car in a modern form if you wanted
Yeah.
to go down that route. But
Yeah.
almost think that if you're building a brand new rim brake bike now, you're pretty much buying a resto mod as
Yeah.
opposed to the latest technology.
But
You know,
interestingly, the bike we're building has the option. The
it does.
Ultra XR4
It does. It does
it still
because
has that option.
it still has that option, and how long they'll have that option for, I don't know. But what you've got to bear in mind is that companies like Bianchi, they first opened their doors. Eduardo Bianchi first opened their doors in 1885.
Yeah.
They're,
Yeah.
so it's almost like Ferrari, and I know other people on all other podcasts are having this conversation at the moment. The day that Ferrari stopped building a V12 naturally aspirated, holy moly,
Yeah.
in the history of that company, it's almost like Bianchi stops building a rim brake bike is almost like the day that
Yeah.
Ferrari stopped building a V12 naturally aspirated engine. It's that
Yeah.
big. So that's why Bianchi is a little bit slower to just stopping the rim brake thing. Yeah, from an engineering perspective, the advantages to the engineer of building a frame for tire clearances, for stopping power, for just even the axle interface, rather than a 5 millimeter quick release on an open dropout, we're now moving to 12 millimeter bolted through
Yeah.
axles. So even the hub interface, so where your wheel attaches to the frame, is so much stiffer and stronger that gives better steering feel and better response.
Yeah.
So from an engineering perspective, it brings so many advantages to the rider.
Yeah. I guess it's worth pointing out, and I think we've mentioned, certainly mentioned in the video, but if you want to upgrade your group set, so you could buy a bike with a lower, I'm not going to say cheaper group set, but let's say 105, much
Yes,
like I did with my Venge, and then
yes,
down the line you might have some spare cash and you might want to upgrade your group set to one of the higher end ones.
yep,
Probably worth noting though, if you're on rim brakes, you're
yes,
stuck with rim brakes. You can't
you are
upgrade to a disc brake setup because that
100%.
fundamentally is the frame has to be designed that way.
Yeah, yeah,
So if for example with the XR4 that we're speccing, if I said, "Oh, let's do rim brakes," and then in 12 months' time I think, "Oh, I quite like a disc brake one," that's you can't do that.
No,
You're
happy days
you're
for us. Yeah, you're
you have
buying
to
a
buy
second
another
bike.
But it's worth noting because I think for me, I bought my bike, and I guess it was probably a couple of years later that you started to see rim brake bikes
Mhm.
coming more and more into road bikes. And I remember thinking, "Oh, I'd really like rim brakes," but I know that is a new
Disc
bike.
brakes. Yeah,
Sorry,
disc brakes.
disc brakes. Sorry,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, Okay, so and we're going to cover. There are some other things to do with the difference between rim and disc, and that's got a lot to do with the wheels. So that is the next episode of Cycle Sunday, where we talk about the wheels and the different options for wheels, because wheels and tires is just a massive subject. So we won't steal our thunder too much.
No,
But one
no.
of the big deciding factors on wheel choice
Yeah.
is how you're going to stop the bike, because
Yes.
you know, and where that's going to be done. So we'll kind of park that one and leave it to
Yeah.
the next episode.
Yes.
But I wanted to have a chat with you about mechanical versus electronic shifting,
Yes.
because those three main vendors that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So for Shimano, the Ultegra and DuraAce
Mm-hmm.
group sets are available with mechanical shifting. Are they not done the 105? Because there was talk about them doing a 105 Di2, but I don't
Yeah.
think that's
Not as yet. No,
no.
they've just kept 105 as a mechanical drive system
Yeah.
because it's a price point. It's a price point.
Yeah,
product.
exactly. So
Yeah.
Di2 is
Yeah.
Shimano's electronic shifting.
It is.
SRAM have the same thing.
Yeah.
And then
which is called Axis, or AXS. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
Campagnolo do, but they only do it on their very high-end group set, Super Record.
They only do
And that's
Super
called
Record
EPS.
EPS. And they used to on 11 speed, because we're now looking at 12 speed, and we'll talk about, well, what's the difference between 9, 10, 11 and 12, because that's an interesting point. And but yeah, they used to do a chorus, well, they used to do Athena, chorus, record and Super Record in EPS, but for this new 12 speed, they're just at this moment doing their Super Record, as you say, which if you want to go electronic, basically means remortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because I bought my bike with mechanical shifting, and one of the challenges for me with the mechanical shifting is the indexing can alter when cables start to stretch and stuff. So you'll find that bikes go slightly out of indexing.
Yeah.
And I guess you can make some adjustments yourself, or you can take it to your bike shop and get them to do it. But I found my 105, I was having to get that adjusted reasonably regularly to get the indexing really spot on.
Yeah.
And then I guess maybe this is the emotional side of my buying personality. I just thought electronic shifting was the way. I just thought it looked cool, sounded cool.
Yeah.
So I took the jump and bought Ultegra Di2 and upgraded my bike to that. And I have to say, it's just such a game changer for me. It fundamentally changed the bike. I absolutely love my electronic shifting. So for the guys, again, we talked about it in the video, but the basic difference now is in a mechanical system, I have a lever on the handlebars, normally integrated with the brake lever.
Yes.
And I push that lever, and that actuates a cable and pushes a mechanical mechanism either on the front or the rear derailleur.
Yeah, nice explanation.
With these electronic shifting, I have a button.
Yeah, some micro switch.
And a little micro switch. And on the front and rear derailleur mechanism, I have a motor.
Correct.
And integrated in the frame somewhere is a little battery, and that motor moves the mechanism at a predetermined amount.
Yes.
And when it does that, it makes a really cool noise.
Yes.
It goes, cool. The front mech especially. I always, and this is the sad bit, when you've got Di2 shifting, or I'm sure it's the same for the others, when you're in a group ride and you come up next to someone, you always just change the front mech so that they know you've got Di2.
No, that's just you, Peter.
Oh, okay. Damn. I thought that was common practice.
No.
And then the other thing that I think is really nice about it, and for me actually one of the best things about it, is, you know, we were talking about cross chaining before.
Yeah.
So when you change your rear gear across your cassette, as the chain goes across, the front hanger that changes the chain in a mechanical system wouldn't move, but in an electronic system, you can just hear it adjust itself to make the clearance okay, so it doesn't rub on the chain.
Yeah, it's called auto trimming. So on a mechanical system, you do have 2 or 3 what we call half shifts, which allows, dependent on where you are in your on the rear cassette, versus being on your front chainring, as you quite
Yeah.
rightly say. And as we've gone from 5-speed, 6-speed, 7-speed, 8-speed, 9-speed up to 12-speed, what's basically happening is that these larger number of cogs are occupying the same amount of space.
Yeah.
So the chains have to therefore get physically thinner. So the distance between the inner and outer cage plates of your front derailleur are narrower. So of course that restricts the amount of lateral movement the rear cassette can manage. So the manufacturers have put these little half shifts into the front gear shifting to help avoid that rubbing. And as you quite rightly, and we call it trim. And you're absolutely correct. A front derailleur on an electronic system will automatically trim as you're moving up and down the rear derailleur, and it is a very great system. It's perfect.
It's cool.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing. I probably should know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Is it right? And again, I must have read this at some point that DuraAce, they were going to bring in shifting that went up in the number of gears. So, because the other thing for cyclists, you kind of have to work out the gears yourself. You can change 2 gears at the front or up to 12 at the back.
Mm-hmm.
So you might stay on your small ring at the front and then go across a selection at the back. Then you go to the big ring at the front and do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought DuraAce were going to literally have gears 1 through to 22, and you just change from 1 to 2, and it would change front and rear. Am I imagining something here?
No. So what you're referring to there is what we call synchro shift.
Yeah.
And you can do that on SRAM Axis. You can do that through their app. On Shimano Di2, it's not just DuraAce, but Ultegra and Di2. You can set up what's called synchro shift, and you can actually set up where it shifts as well. So what will happen is that it almost makes your front derailleur buttons redundant. So all you need to do is shift left to right on the rear cassette, and at a predetermined point, at a point where you would have to go into a cross-chaining situation, it would automatically shift the front derailleur and shift the rear cassette to give the closest ratio to what you were about to go into. So it's
so you
really
go through
difficult
a nice
to
smooth progression of ratios.
Yes, yeah. And what also happens is when you've got it linked up to a Garmin, or apparently other GPS systems are available, but when you have it clicked up to your well, no, there's lots of good things, but but it's one of those things that it even gives you a beep. So what it does is you shift, and it gives you a beep, so you know that the next shift that you bring is going to shift the front derailleur. So it just allows you to go, oh, I'll need to just take a little bit more pressure off my pedals on the next shift. Otherwise, you're going to put the drive system under quite a lot of strain. It's really clever, and it works really well.
And you might listen to this. You might listen to this and think, what a waste of time. However, for me, it's about momentum, right?
Yes.
So when you're cycling on a pace and you hit a hill and you start going up a gradient, and you get to the point where you think, I'm going to have to change down to my smaller ring on the front, and you do that, what you would normally have to do is, if you did that and didn't change the rear, your gear ratios change a big step, and you'll over rev. So you have to change down and change up at the same time.
Yes.
And that over revving and getting it sorted, that small time to get that sorted, you lose your momentum.
Yeah, you could lose 10 mile an hour, easy.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's that again. So that's one of the. And there's an argument that says if you know your bike and you know your ratios, you can do that with a mechanical system.
Yeah.
But it's about starting to understand that interplay between, and we could geek out on gear ratios in a big way.
Yeah.
But we're not going to. Although we are you're going to tell me what the ratios you're putting on the bike. You're going to tell me that soon, hopefully.
Yeah. They're definitely appropriate.
Yeah. So so that
But
so but
sorry, Peter. There's just one final thing to that as well. Is you're 100% correct in what you're saying about you can choose your mechanical, and if you're experienced enough and you ride enough. When you were doing your Mont Ventoux triple
mm-hmm,
climb,
mm-hmm.
what was your cognitive function like at the beginning of the day versus the final 5 to 6 shifts that you put in at the end of the day?
Mate,
You
we were
had
wiped out by the end of the
you
day.
wiped out.
Yeah.
So it's not just about how much experience or mechanical sympathy that you've got, but if you're riding big days in the saddle and it's hot and you are tired and you are mentally and physically drained, there are times where which lever to press next, you just haven't got the capacity.
Yeah, because it was
So
38 degrees when we did it. It was
yeah,
really, really hot.
yeah, yeah. And these are the things. So these systems, they don't just make it nicer to use when you're fresh and you're fit and you're fully aware, but it's at the end of the days that these things actually you go, oh,
Yeah,
thanks for helping me out there, pal.
yeah. Although it would have been
Yeah.
nice at the end of that particular day to have an extra couple of gears on the back and a bigger. So I ran out again
Yeah.
because the other really nice little feature is on. I run a Garmin Edge 1000 computer, and that's
Yeah.
linked to my Di2,
Yes.
so I can see what gears I'm in
on the screen. Yes.
Without having to look down at the bike, which I know is super lazy. But at
No,
the
it's
end of
not.
the
It's
ride,
great.
you get really interesting things like how many gear changes you've made and stuff for the front and rear mech, and so that's quite good. But so
when I was doing the
Marmot,
when I was doing the Marmot and I was riding with my pal Steve, he was actually on an Ultra XR4, so I got to look at that all day. It was really nice. And the amount of times that we'd just get onto a climb, and within sort of 2 minutes of getting on the climb, I'd turn around to Steve and say, "Oh, flipping heck, I've got a mechanical." "Oh, why? Why?" "Well, my gear shifter is broken." "What do you mean?" "Well, I've run out. It won't go any further."
yeah, they're both on one.
Yeah, they're both on one. It's just not going any further. You're right. You need more gears.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess just the electronic shifting thing. It's a really nice to have. For me, I like the fact that it requires a lot less maintenance. I never have to adjust mine. It just works all the time perfectly. I love the trimming function, and the noise sounds really cool.
Yes.
And I was lucky in a respect that when I retrofitted it to my bike, my bike had room to have the battery in the seat tube, and it's all fully integrated, so it looks proper.
Yes.
And then all you have to do is, because it's a battery, you have to charge your bike up, which is a bit weird.
Yes.
But the charge on my Di2 lasts ages. I mean,
yes,
ages and ages and ages, months.
Yes,
So,
yes, yeah. I mean, really, they're so reliable. The only 3 reasons why Di2 would ever fail is if it wasn't set up and put on the bike properly in the first place. And the vast majority, and again, the comments box is just going to go mental on this, I would imagine.
Good.
But the vast majority of Di2 failures and bad press is people just fitting it to their bikes in their garage and not knowing how to set it up correctly. And that's the same with mechanical stuff as well. So just please remember, there's a lot of home mechanics out there who are really good. And we see people and they come in now and again just for can I have a second pair of eyes on this? But really, they do very well. Yeah. But if you don't have the experience, don't just watch a YouTube video and just think that you can fit Di2 to your bike or quite a lot of things to your bike. Do get expert advice. So once it's set up correctly, it is brilliant. The second reason why Di2 will fail if somebody just hits it with a jet wash, so all of these systems, they are fully waterproof to puddles and rainwater and harsh showers and those sorts of things. We've never had a failure through normal environmental concerns. But the moment you start really attacking it with a jet wash, you can get issues there. And the third reason is you forget to charge your battery. Those are the only three reasons why we've ever seen failures.
I was doing a sportif a couple of years ago, and there was a guy up ahead swearing like a trooper. We were like 5 miles in, maybe 10 miles into a 100-mile sportif, and his Di2 battery had run out because he'd forgot to charge it. So he was basically looking at 90 odd miles in the same gear.
I mean that is a bad day. That's a really bad day.
Funny though.
Yeah.
So I can't recommend electronic shifting enough. Oh, one more thing to probably mention is I think we did talk about this in the video, but just as a recap, is the Shimano and the Campagnolo systems run effectively wires between the hoods and the thing, whereas the SRAM one is a wireless system.
It is.
I guess that makes fitting it easier because you don't have to worry about running cables in the bike.
Yeah.
But it's wireless.
Yeah. It's wireless. So I was hoping we were going to talk about this. So because sometimes your frame requires or is better running electronic than it is mechanical. So if we take the XR4 build that we're doing for you, for example, if we ran mechanical, we wouldn't be able to go fully integrated. Mm-hmm. You would still have to have. So if you know, you'll notice, and if we remember, we'll point this out at handover. Is on the side of the down tube, you still have the ports there. They're blanking plates at the moment, but in the frame kit, there are ports to put your cables in for your mechanical. So you can run it mechanical if you want to.
Yeah.
But it means that those cables then have to run on the outside of the frame. So it's not quite as nice a finish.
Yeah.
Whereas with electronic, because you're effectively just running an electronic signal from the micro switches, it can either just be a wire, or in the case, as you quite rightly said, with the SRAM system, a wireless system, which ultimately is so much easier to diagnose. It's a really easy system to fit and use. But then, of course, the batteries are then fitted onto the outside of the derailleurs, as opposed to an internal battery in the frame, which means that the look of the system is a little bit more bulky because it's got the battery on the derailleur. Yeah. So you've got pros and cons to it all, but like we said right at the beginning, they're all really well done and they're also executed fantastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, we said in the video, we're going Campag for the bike. And the reasons for that we mentioned in the video. It's the Italian bike for me, and therefore it has to have an Italian group set. It's got to have Campag, and we're doing the electronic version of Super Record EPS.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited because one of the things we haven't been able to show yet on camera is just what that looks like, because the amount of carbon fiber and exotic materials on that group set is frankly ridiculous. I know we looked at your one, which is the mechanical one on your bike, and that's stunning. Yes. So I take that and think, it's going to be mega.
It's really nice.
It's going to be mega.
Yeah.
The last little bit in our last few minutes is just to talk about ratios. So what are the gear ratios that are going on my bike again?
Yeah, they're going to be great.
Yeah, okay. Is on a serious note, you will let me know what the ratios are once. But is the last thing you were saying, which is quite interesting, is a determining factor of which level of group set you get. I know, let's say Ultegra or Di2, for example, you might actually have
Ultegra or DuraAce.
Ultegra or DuraAce. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
You might have your hand forced by your required choice of ratios.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So, for example, and it's actually one of the things that I absolutely love about Campag, because even on their Super Record, we can fit a wide range rear cassette. Whether we have done or
32,
not is
32,
to be advised.
Maybe? 34 maybe?
So it is always possible to fit that cassette to a super record drive
Yeah.
system. But the other nice thing is that they, for the same front end, you can choose the chainring options as well. So we can run a compact, which is a 50 and 34. Sorry, it's been a long chat day today.
Yes.
So a 50-34, what's called a mid compact, which is a 52-36. So it just gives a slightly higher gear ratio on the front end of the bike. Or you can go to what was called the original standard, which is 53-39. And that is very much like a badge of honor for people, but I just find that's really big. So we can choose, and this is why I've been a little bit of a vase. Well, yeah, that kind of thing. Or wherever you live, as we've said before on podcasts and videos, is if you live in Norwich, you're going to, or the Lincolnshire Plains, or somewhere like that, then actually you're going to spin out of a really low gear set. But if you live in the Lake District, where life is just at 25% gradients, then you can be a really light and strong rider. We're going to have to do the Fred Whitten, by the way. You'll love that. Yeah.
Well, put decent ratios on the bike then. Does the super record EPS come with a triple?
It doesn't, but you don't need it. But the beauty is about so for my bike, I actually have multiple chainring options for my chain set. So if I'm doing a ride that's relatively flat, I will put my mid compact on. And then if I'm going to do something like the Fred Whitten in the Lake District or the Marmot or something like that, I've got the ability that I can then put smaller chain rings on. So it's the same chain set, it's the same bike, but with a change of chain ring can alter the way that bike's going to perform. So this is, but the problem that you've got with some ratios on some group sets is that there is an assumption that the person who, say, for example, is running Shimano DuraAce, that they are a pretty strong, experienced rider. And therefore, in DuraAce, they don't offer a longer rear derailleur option to put a very low range rear cassette on. So you then have to go to Ultegra. Your hand is forced. You then have to run Ultegra if you want a compact plus a low range rear cassette. So it's important to understand the individual's environment, riding style, riding experience, whilst advising those group sets to people. So you might have the money for it, but sometimes you might not have the legs for it.
We just filled an hour there, and we could probably carry on for another hour, but we won't.
And hopefully people are still listening.
Yeah, exactly. But it's such an interesting subject. There's so much to it. I think the main takeaways are that the frame is key, and don't compromise on the frame just to get the sexy group set you want, because you can always upgrade at some point in the future. And like I said in the video, what I did with mine, I upgraded my main bike and took the components off that and put them on my winter bike. So I got two upgrades for the price of one. And what I did with that, I just went, I actually got my local bike shop to do that for me, because I could have done it myself, but I'd have done it wrong. It was easy. I just gave them both bikes, and a week later I came and picked them up, and I had two new bikes. Basically, it was brilliant. The next episode of Cycle Sunday, we're going to be talking wheels and tyres. So there's a bit of overlap into the wheels and tyres thing. Clearly, we're going with disc brakes, so that will give us some different options in terms of wheels. But you think, surely that's a fairly simple subject. But there's a lot to talk about, because in your priority list, it was frame, then wheels. And tyres, and actually,
it's really complicated.
Really complicated for a lot of people. I would argue maybe that if they have a bike that they want to improve, probably the best way to improve it and the easiest one is just to get a decent set of wheels on it, right?
Yeah, make a massive
Just buy
difference.
a decent set of wheels. I did that with my first road bike. I bought some wheels off a friend that were actually probably the same price as the bike, and the difference it made was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and they look cool as well.
They
right?
do look cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in fact, you can just see them above my you need to tune into the next episode of Cycle Sunday. Remember to subscribe to this podcast to keep up to date with everything, because every Sunday at 6:00 we put a podcast out. Make sure you tune in next Sunday. Watch the video first on Petrol Ped, because we're talking about wheels and tyres. And then join Paul and I for the podcast afterwards to debunk all the stuff that we're going to talk about in that one, because it's a
looking forward to it already.
Really good subject. Anyway,
yes,
and the video might break the internet.
Yes, and you're going to get tired of our puns.
Oh yeah, right. Stop, guys. It's been brilliant. Thank you for joining us on Cycle Sunday podcast, Paul. It's been a pleasure as always, mate. And what do we say at this point?
Oh, brilliant. Ride safe, everybody.
Ride safe. Enjoy.